Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to a commentary channel. And again, I just want to push the fact that I'm an author and I have published on Amazon. So my name is Gem Stone and there's 25 different types of books. I just want to respond to a comment why I left the Baha'i Faith. Firstly, I want to go over when I was a Baha'i. I first heard of the Baha'i Faith in the mid-1980s, but I dismissed it at the time as a cult. Later, in the early 2000s, I ended up joining the Baha'i Faith and becoming very important. The Baha'i Temple in ACT in Canberra at Woden Creek. I helped in the secretarial work there, and I helped with that building that temple open. My job was to invite embassies and ambassadors to the opening of the temple, and my ex-husband at the time was we were both caretakers, so he would look after and mow, around the lawns and the gardens, and we would do the cleaning as well. Now, if you want to be a Baha'i, you can't, so how do I explain this? The Baha'i Faith is unique. You don't get people knocking at your door explaining the Baha'i Faith to you. If you want to become a Baha'i, you have to do the research yourself, the spiritual research yourself. So if it interests you, you are forced isn't the right word, but you have to accept that every other religion was right for its time, that every other religion, the prophets came from God, and that each one was for its time. So the reason why the Baha'i Faith, which came out of Persia, which is now Iran, in the mid-1800s, is because the human race we had revolutionized with technology. So the old religions no longer applied because the reasoning was that we had advanced. So two new prophets came. The first was the Bab, and the second was Baha'u'llah. Now, the other thing about the Baha'i Faith, and it has some really good belief systems, is that men and women are equal, science and religion are equal, plus if you want to be a position like a secretary or something in the Baha'i Faith, you can't go and do, say we'll compare it to a normal election. I'll go out and I'll advertise and say, vote for me because I promise to do such and such. No, the Baha'i Faith is completely different. You get nominated, so everybody is open. Everyone in the Baha'i community is open to serving because that's how they see it. They see it as an act of servitude. And after serving at the Baha'i Temple in Canberra, ACT, I was married to a man, and after it opened, he was unhappy. So we left Canberra and came back to Brisbane, but it was like I lost touch with the Baha'i Faith. Anyway, because at the time we had offered to go and do this, help with this temple open up, which was a really big deal, we were given a few gifts. One of the gifts was a piece of carpet from Baha'u'llah's place of residence, and the other was a pair of drumsticks from Africa, because the Baha'i Faith has spread all around. Anyway, so after leaving Canberra, we lost touch. I then divorced that particular man, and I later remarried, and I became a drug addict. So I wasn't in any shape or form capable of any spiritual involvement, and we lived for most of our addiction in different places. At one time we were homeless, and then we went to Gympie, and just spiritual matters weren't on my mind. Then when I got clean about 4 years ago, I thought of the Baha'i Faith, and I didn't want to rejoin. I just decided that I was going to give back the piece of carpet, because I didn't think it belonged to me. I thought it belonged to the Baha'i Faith. So I Googled the local Baha'i local spiritual assembly, and I managed to contact them, and they convinced me into joining the Baha'i Faith again. So why did I leave this time? So up to about 2 years ago, I was a Baha'i again. But what happened is I don't own a car. I have a dog. Cars are very expensive. My dog's very expensive. So it's either the choice of a car or a dog. And I've chosen my dog. And the last time I drove was 2020. And so I'm a little bit hesitant because I've got on a bit in years. Anyway, to be able to go to Baha'i Feast. Now, for those of you who don't know, Baha'is don't have like a church. They meet in everybody's home. The only temple, as I've explained, is in Woden Creek in Canberra. But when there's a holy feast, so I've got to go back again a bit in history. So the Baha'is accept that the last faith was Muslim. So from Muslims, the Baha'i Faith came. But again, I want to let you know that to be a Baha'i, you have to accept not only Islam, you have to accept Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, and so forth. That these were all prophets of God. And they have a lot of feasts. They usually tie in with a lot of like Muslim type of feasts. And at these feasts, you will go and you'll have readings. And the readings could be from the Bible, the reading could be from the Quran, or it could be from Baha'u'llah himself, or from his grandson, or his son. His son was Abdul I've forgotten, and his grandson was Shoghi Effendi. Anyway, there's prayers. So the Baha'is have a book of prayers, but I'm getting off topic. The question was, why did I leave? It's because it was like I was forgotten. So every time there was a festival, nobody rang me to contact me. Did I want to attend? It was left like I was isolated. So I finally contacted the local spiritual assembly, and I said, I just don't want to be part of this anymore, because Baha'is have a big emphasis on community, especially a couple of years ago. every year from the International House of Justice comes down certain rules and things that we have to do for the year. And a couple of years ago, it was a community thing, and I just felt like my local Baha'is were just ignoring me. So basically, I left because I felt like I was forgotten about or wasn't cared for. The local spiritual assembly did say to me that they would meet with me, but by then I said no, and I'd moved on back to claim the fact that my psychic gifts, and also that I came to realize that I no longer believe in God or gods. And to be a Baha'i, you have to believe in all these prophets, and you have to believe in God. I love Baha'is too because they teach that darkness, evil, is just the absence of light. And I tell you how I first became a Baha'i. I read a book about the Bab, and the Bab, how he was persecuted. And I seriously, at the time when I became a Baha'i, I had to question whether this was a cult. I went, because of old Christianity holding on to me and the fear of demons, because I was a Christian simply out of fear of going to hell, and I really bought into demons. So when I first became a Baha'i, I was questioning, is this demonic? And when I was first a Baha'i with that man that I divorced, we were very active. We had a very active community, and they did take care of us. That was on the Gold Coast, but here on the Sunshine Coast, I didn't feel the same sense of care for me. So that's why I left, and I just pursued back my old psychic gifts, and I, as I said, came to believe that God or gods do not exist. So it's simple as that. I can no longer be part of a religion, because religion asks you to believe in a god or gods, and the Baha'i Faith in particular gets you to accept that all religions were all prophets for the time. So for example, Christ came at the time when people were much, and this is doing them a disfavor, but people lived more simple lives. So that's how the Baha'is explain it. So that's why we've had twin prophets in the Baha'i Faith of the Bab and Baha'u'llah, because they were the promised ones. And in fact, I can't think of the actual Christian sect, but that at the same time they thought the second coming of Christ was happening was when the Bab was born. So it's just plain and simple. I felt that this community on the Sunshine Coast was neglecting me. Nobody rang to see if I was fine. Nobody rang to see if I needed a lift. And by the time I let them know how I felt, it was too late. So I hope that answered your question. Thanks for the comment. And if I do have to say this though, if I was going to be religious, out of all the religions, I would pick the Baha'i Faith because of what they believe in, and unlike every other religions, like Muslims, you have Sunni and Shiite. Christianity, you have hundreds, thousands of denominations, and that was the other reason why the Baha'i Faith was born, because each of the past had got distorted. So and the Baha'i Faith also teaches that in a couple of centuries that maybe the Baha'i faith will be distorted and there'll be a new prophet. But I don't believe in, I believe that they thought they were prophets of God and that they had some very good moral teachings, but I don't believe in God, so I can't believe that they were holier men than what you and I are. So yeah, thank you. And this was pretty long-winded, but it was pretty simple. I felt neglect. That's why I left the Baha'i Faith. But if I had to choose a religion, I'd go with the Baha'i Faith. Thanks again. Take care of each other and of yourselves. Love, light, and blessings. Bye.